You're listening to the Women in Cybersecurity podcast, where global voices meet to inspire, inform, and ignite change in the world of cyber. Hosted by Yuri Diogenes, Alexandra Francu, and myself, Yulia Iancu, we bring you real stories, expert insights, and bold conversations from the front lines of cybersecurity. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Women in Cybersecurity podcast, to the episode 8. Today we have an amazing guest. It's a leader who has built an incredible career in security and leadership, and we can't wait for you to meet her. So, Alexa, tell us more about our special guest.
Hello, everyone. So our guest today, Iryna Schwindt, is the cybersecurity leader with a strong focus on secure by design principles. Currently serving as a lead secure by design manager for digital channels and products at Vodafone, Iryna drives AI risk management and red teaming initiatives to ensure robust security across complex digital ecosystems. Her journey includes roles as Secure by Design Manager and Security Assessment Specialist, where she collaborated with product teams to implement multi-layered security architectures for high availability platforms. With expertise spanning threat modeling, cloud security, and advanced risk frameworks, Iryna combines technical depth with strategic vision. She also contributes to the cybersecurity community through volunteering with OWASP AI Exchange. Her passion lies in embedding security into innovation, making resilience a design principle, not just an afterthought. So without further ado, let's dive in today's session. Welcome, Iryna, and welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for such a nice introduction.
So, Iryna, let's start with the first question. So, what first sparked your interest in security?
As a discipline, well, actually for me, it was quite exciting to study this as a discipline. So I decided to go for a university degree in cybersecurity because I found the field of cybersecurity so complex, so diverse. So there were so many different ways and opportunities to learn more. And on top of my software development experience, I decided that I need to improve it also in cybersecurity area. So I guess challenge, interest in different technological stacks, and the ability to enhance the knowledge was something that really encouraged me to go for this field.
The role in which you're operating and the field in which you're operating at the moment. Secure by design sounds very simple, but probably it is incredibly complex in practice. What's one misconception that you probably hear about this practice?
Yeah, I think many practitioners in cybersecurity and in the business areas are not really familiar, right? So with by design approaches, they're more facing, let's say, compliancy functions where they need to set up regulations, right? So and going over ad hoc evaluations, so in live, and less focusing on cybersecurity controls during design and development phases. By design means to support development teams, engineering teams from the very beginning, from the inception, from the strategy, from the planning of resources throughout the entire life cycle, right? So since we're working and operating in quite changing, diverse world, so where we have agile development, different teams coming together when we're building and establishing products, there's also a notion that security needs to be included as an integral part of this exercise, where sometimes you see developers challenged with activities related to security and they require upskilling, training, maybe additional practices, tools being brought into their normal development environment in order to facilitate security consideration requirements or whatsoever. So I guess it's kind of also a misconception, purely technical activities. So of course, for cybersecurity, it's important to communicate business risk out of technical risk, saying if we don't do that, how that may affect business long term. So if we build the products that need to establish trust and maintain this trust, to have these practices considered make our development robust. resilient, and actionable.
Hey.
So I would say also this is a misconception that you only acting as an outsider. And I like to say that most important part is to have this cooperation and collaboration between teams to establish this initial trust between different functions. Yeah. So, and I do not like when security is being perceived as a policeman, right? So that you need to maybe escape, hide somewhere, and wait for the last second before you can admit, yeah, so some misconfiguration or errors, issues the team faces. So it's better to be embedded into that. And I think throughout my career, my strong focus was really on the establishment of such trust. And I enjoy the feeling that I'm a part of a bigger team. So I'm not just someone outside coming into the question when a particular practices needs to be executed. I like it really in a way how you are part of the team. And of course, if your product, service, or anything is successful, right? So you may never face any security incidents, right? So if you're lucky enough, then you can also be proud of this delivery. So it's important point where you feel that you contributed to the overall outcome and success of the service or product that your team built.
Yep. Thank you. Julia?
So yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, sometimes security just comes up as very important when something bad happens. It's very easy to notice it right then, but sometimes, unfortunately, that's a bit too late. And you were speaking about a risk, and AI is now both a risk and a resource. So how do you see, what's your perspective on how AI will bring challenges to the cybersecurity world?
It's such a such a big topic, although it sounds so easy to ask, it's quite hard to answer. And so you mentioned before also join the outdoors team in OWASP AI Exchange, actually answering this question more holistically, talking into consideration different areas, not necessarily just technological, right? So layer that we most probably focusing on, but also forgetting of social economic impact of AI that it may have on the society at large. So of course we do see new threats and new attack vectors. And if you haven't had a strong security posture, right? So what AI may offer to an attacker is just advancement into exploitation. And from maybe social engineering and phishing that can be now executed much faster, right? So much faster and more effectively, but also more sophisticated attacks can be planned, right? So if an adversary can learn from some behaviors, right? So can train a model on different types of attacks, it also can attack a system more efficient and effectively. And it's not a new area. I like to say that with generative AI, we started to talk about AI, yeah, so as generative AI, but those practices and those technology are just existing for many years now. And there were certain advancements, right? So in machine learning for cyber defense and for prevent functions as well, not just for adversaries. But yeah, so I think if I need to dive into details, AI security requires different mindset. So it needs to take into consideration all dependencies from the supply chain risk, because we normally utilizing, right? So existing model services or, so features offered, not necessarily we are building all the time ourselves AI, yeah? So, and of course, we have new challenges for people, processes, and ways to observe what can happen with the system and how you can identify that something went wrong. So rook, right? So from that perspective, also important to know that the model can decay, yeah, so your data may not be relevant, so you may expose too much sensitive information. So this is where threat modeling becomes even more crucial, with the focus on the ways how AI systems are built. Yeah, so and from that, of course, some of the previous cybersecurity mechanisms, right? So like zero trust, because we now have assumed roles, overprivileged access, a lot of different challenges that coming with the positive, let's say, effects of establishment of AI services in different organizations, for example, or we as individuals, we may give services more permissions that we actually want to give them. And in the same time, we do not always have this granularity on controls, what we're giving away and what we're getting out of it. Mm-hmm. So I would say also with agentic AI, if we're going into automation and establishment of more autonomous decision making, this becomes even more dangerous. Because, yeah, so
Agentic
we
AI
have
is one other big topic, because I believe this will impact the world even more than what generative AI can do.
Right. So we say that in non-agentic setup, you still have a human in a loop. So it's still the human being making decisions. And in agentic setup, you don't have it anymore, but you have different tools, different tasks, different permissions given for self-learning, yes, so self-improving elements of the system. And that itself requires a new security architecture, right? So new ways of thinking. There are many helpful sources for those who would like to learn about this new traits, yeah, that needs to be considered. And I guess for those who are practitioners in cybersecurity, they would also need to upskill themselves in order to operate and react on the risks associated with artificial intelligence.
What would be the skills that you recommend someone who is maybe not yet a practitioner in this field and starting today in this AI world? I don't think that someone could afford the luxury of not being introduced into what AI mechanisms look like in the world of cybersecurity. So having this mindset and what you just said earlier about having to redesign everything with AI mindset at its core, what would you advise someone to start upskilling on?
Yeah. So classical thing is AI literacy, actually, to understand what type of AI we have, right? So, and what are the risks and challenges that are coming with these different types of AI. I can definitely recommend the sources on OWASP AI Exchange page if you look for like more comprehensive material. Also a Mitra Atlas, so attacks and defense mechanisms. You can also look into OWASP Top 10 for LLMs if you work in particular with large language models, but also few papers, right? So what are the transformer decoder? Like what you actually cannot remediate in this type of architecture, but you would need to accept as a risk by operating with different types of models, and what is potentially, right? So what are the costs associated with the notion of building a secure system with maybe additional practices? So in particular, I also would like to recommend to rethink what is AI red teaming, yeah, so or go maybe beyond just benchmarking of certain models and ad hoc evaluations, but look into more, again, holistic, multi-view when it comes to the system analysis. And there are a few good papers on, so for example, new threat modeling approaches and new design approaches from like different sources where so the researcher put some emphasis on this new ways of thinking. We are not working with so let's say deterministic systems anymore. If you have generative AI, if you will put the temperature to 0, you're still going to have non-deterministic output. And it also heavily dependent on data. I would also recommend to focus on data handling. Yeah, so and maybe rethinking that we normally working with like binaries, right? So there is a file somewhere, there is a database somewhere, there is an entry somewhere, but also in this new world of interaction using prompts, or using commands, you have yet another layer of data governance that's sometimes being forgotten. in its sensitivity and criticality, as well as the output from the systems, because they cannot be always reliable. Yeah. So, and again, especially in the agentic setup, when you operate in highly risky environment, so where the decision may have significant repercussions, better to build new processes rather than accepting the consequences that can be extremely severe. And yeah, so having this threat modeling, right? So having this outcome modeling as a mindset established. I always like to say that for me, AI red teaming, it's more than just, oh, we did a pen test, right? So one-time evaluation. It's an ability to learn as the system evolves as well and underlying technologies evolve. Basically, for me, it's a cross-functional collaboration between engineering teams, cybersecurity team, governance teams to establish the ways of working by which you can guarantee that this continuous evaluation takes place as well. And you can enhance and improve the testing and evaluation for the systems that you build, right? So it's no longer just going to be, oh yeah, check this OWASP top 10, yeah, so, and then you're safe and secure. OWASP top 10 sometimes only scratches on surface, and attacks also can come from different areas. So as you observe a system and its behavior, also as a cybersecurity, you will learn more and you will prepare the team better for new attacks coming.
We have also probably listeners who are at the very beginning of their journey. Would you mind sharing what OWASP is? Why is it important to
so
look out
for those who who do not know OWASP as open source, right? So an open organization to establish security best practices. You can imagine it as a community of the practitioners coming together and working openly and transparent on mitigation controls and elaborating on the risk and testing methodologies for different technological stacks. So in the past, they developed heavily API standards, right? So web application testing standards. So they were this main driver, right? So to recognize that we need to manage risk and elaborate on controls. Yeah. So as a community rather than as a paid individual organization, right? So where can someone steer it in one direction or another? So it's open for participation. So you can join OWASP Slack channel and you can search and look for different open communities. You can introduce yourself in the main channel and ask to include you into the different conversations and topics. So I really like this, so democratical approach for this way of engagement. And I do appreciate that many cybersecurity professionals sharing their knowledge absolutely for free. So everything that is published by OWASP is freely consumable. So you can use it in your practices and sometimes, so just mentioning that this is the source you took it from, but no one wants to monetize it and make something out of it. So although many organizations, also training companies, right, so took the content to provide training on a broader scale. Yeah, we definitely need communities like that to steer. And so with additional organizations coming and joining and also participating in different activities related to cybersecurity.
Okay, so I want to, because you said something about a skill that's very important. And I remember that before choosing what I want to do in life, somebody told me that we're in the era of data. So the best paid job will be the one where you will be able to dig through the data and make something out of it. But now AI took this job. So yes, what you said, the governance and securing this data is the next best thing that you could do in this era.
Maybe I will argue and say that we may not master this data subject quite well, right? So we would have then maybe more effective and efficient systems based on better data. Of course, data itself has different risks before it can be fed into a system. And it's also one of the risks that we have while we're training. Yeah, so machine learning models and enhancing other types of models with data, what we have there are different types of outliers, right? So that, for example, overexposure of sensitive information. So the challenge today is that all biggest large language model providers train their models without permission on a huge amount of personal identifiable information. And everybody who would like to maybe use those models, right, so will be exposed to the risk that just incidentally they can get outputs that are not desired, right? So even if you never ask for a particular sensitive data, you may still get it out, right? So because it's there as a part of the model. Of course, during the training, also models can be subject to memorization risks. So basically, if the patterns cannot be recognized and you have quite small sampling there, so you will get sensitive data potentially memorized and
be used on
be provided as an output, right? So we have very specific machine learning risks associated with quality and quantity of data. There are notions of having like synthetic data fed into the model as an alternative to sensitive information, but also synthetic data comes with certain risks. For example, also re-identification risks. If it was not created by, let's say, using privacy preserving techniques, so-called, that removing the link between individual, right? So from this bigger data set, then you end up with the same challenges. So I would say still data management, also in the sense of providing accurate and so less sensitive data by nature will be of desire. So we don't need to remediate this as a risk later on or taking into consideration as a potential caveat, right? So while interacting with those systems. And I know, I'm sorry, just as it came to my mind, that I hear so frequently this claim that, Europe overregulate everything. And I guess the main point is that we actually respect individuals, right? So, and individual rights, whereas others just took something that never belonged to them and use it to enhance technology. So it's a different mindset and a different approach. And it has, I would say, less to do with regulation for the sake of regulation, but maybe, so it's like this parenting control. Sometimes you may not be aware of certain issues that may arise from the usage of technology, and it's quite good when someone can advocate, right? So, or educate others or build at least some guardrails and safe mechanisms so you are not exposed to the tremendous consequences of misuse of this technology, right? But you're right, it's still heavily about data.
But I have a question. Is this still possible to achieve, or is it a bit too late to remove that data? Because we might not personally add this data, but of course
Julia is concerned about the amount of data that got leaked, and now
it's already there. Like the PII is already there. Companies do have it. It's very easy to get once into an LLM, and then you may never take it out. It's already there.
Yeah. So I would also argue that there are few projects also by the big hyperscalers offering those large language models to train privacy preserving models. So it's not too late. It's just the question of effort and resources one willing to put in order to achieve this. Of course, on the individual level of a company, an organization, it's impossible. But again, as I said, if it will be an incentive to do it in the community, putting resources and efforts together, I think it's never too late. And in the sense of the inherent risk, it's better to have models that train at least on the less amount of data that, first of all, not even relevant for the use case. Maybe let's touch base on this misusage of large language models. In many scenarios, you don't need a large language model. You can survive with a small one, or you can survive with a different type of AI model instead, right? So maybe enhance only a fraction, a portion of an output that you have in the overall system. And yet, we divert, right? So to this complexity and building these models that's supposed to cover all aspects of knowledge, and yet what they do is a next token prediction. There is new knowledge generated through those models, right? So and therefore it's never too late in my view. Just incentive needs to be right, and community needs to be interested. And also we as individuals, as citizens, we need to be interested in that, knowing our rights and knowing potential impact those models may have in the future on our jobs, our access to different services or whatsoever that is.
Tell us a bit about how you personally protect yourself from these risks and challenges that an overexposure of data implies in an AI world. What would you recommend probably our listeners to use as bare minimum level of protection? And what would you teach us to do also further?
I don't like to be in this teacher seat, but I will also argue that when you use large language models in the context of application like ChatGPT or whatever that is, like in a different flavor, so be cautious of the information that is shared there, especially on health issues or maybe family issues, something connected, something very personal and private. And we all know that's an existing running gag that people now putting into ChatGPT more information that they put previously to the Google search bar, and yet hoping that that's not going to fall short on them. So of course, in the end, very less people reading terms and conditions, knowing what happens with this data, even in order to facilitate content moderation. Some of the inputs and outputs are going to be reviewed and stored and maybe also used to retrain models to perform better. So while interacting in this more cautious way, you at least can limit an exposure. And the same applies for like self-diagnosis and I know it just depends on the nature, how you use this service. Yeah. So I do use some of the services for example, summarization or rephrasing. I think it can be helpful in certain contexts, right? So tied up maybe, or making more consistent some of the messages you want to distribute in different audiences, or communicating particular scenarios better, learning also through the ways how it can be enhanced, because as a not native speaker, maybe also a challenge with the ways how I communicate, and I would like to improve myself. At the same time, there were definitely going to be a few topics that are absolutely taboo to put into any external services. And I guess it's just to have this, vigilance, and just have in mind what can happen, because as soon as you put your data somewhere, you no longer control it. It's
that's
gone.
the key, or the key takeaway that we probably must take out of this conversation, that we need to be careful of everything that we feed the AI with, because the second that leaves our fingertips, it no longer exists in our level of control or perimeter of security, to call.
Yeah, also what comes out of it, because you probably know that you can get hallucinations and confabulations, right? So it's not a fact-based system, right? So just train on different patterns of initial data sets you are not aware of, you are not familiar with. Also take into consideration the new risks that the data that can be used for training can be backdoored, can be malicious, can be modified on purpose to harm certain groups and individuals based on the patterns, so that the model may recognize through this training exercise. So it's not just about an input, but also about the output part, right? So we as individuals, we're always going to be accountable and responsible, and we should not outsource decision making to a service, a model, or to an algorithm we ourselves do not understand well. And I think that happens quite a lot.
That's
because
a very
we kind of
thing you said, and I'd like to go deeper a bit into the way putting this data into AI can harm you as an individual. and maybe some examples if you are familiar with them.
Yeah, so again, everything that exists on the internet and you haven't explicitly prohibited from crawling and using for training will be scraped and used, right? So, and we have a quite diverse number of groups that tend to overshare information, maybe not just related to us, but also to minors, children, and so on. So we also bear responsibility for those whose data we may overexpose, social media channels and others. You probably know that every social media platform nowadays change terms and conditions, asking explicit or sometimes just informing you that everything that you have, except maybe private chats, but wait for it, so can be used to train and enhance AI. And it means, so whatever you share there will be a part of this training data set and also a part of, well, again, when it comes to biometrics, okay, our face, our voice nowadays also can be scraped, faked, and used for fraud or any other activities. And we may be sitting on this podcast can be also a subject of a potential fraud because we have a long enough recording of the ways how we look like, yeah, so how we talk.
Seconds is enough.
Exactly. So, and this is where maybe the different approach towards information and understanding how that can be misused, right? So it needs to be established because even if you try not to be on the web at all, right? So you try not to post anything, you go into private mode everywhere. Sooner or later, they're going to be just a piece of information that can be in interest, right? So for certain fraudulent activities. And yeah, so if there is a possibility not to expose too much, right? So to establish maybe broader links and connection, then I think we should go for it and be vigilant.
Yes, that's true. Even if a person is isolated, I mean, it's not possible for a person to be isolated completely. Even if you do not share it or you do not expose yourself, somebody else will, because we all live in a community and it's almost impossible not to be on the internet in at least the tiniest way. And I want to ask now about not the talent gap, but maybe also confidence, the gender gap, yes, that there is in this field. What can we do so that women are more attracted to this field and also retained in this field?
Being asked this question quite often. I actually have no solution to that because I never was in a position not to be attracted. So I guess for me, it's like, okay, leave this role, be someone else and figure it out. How could it work for somebody? I do have a lot of cybersecurity, female cybersecurity professionals in my community. And I guess I have a bit of maybe biased observation when it comes to a gender gap. I think it's also quite important that women feel included on a different levels. And when we say women, we have also individuals with different career aspirations, right? So life aspiration, it can differ from one individual to another. And we should not treat all women as like in a pack, right? So I guess to recognize that first over this inviting environment and community. And I like the initiatives like he for she, right? So when also peers, male advocate for more female representation or even diverse representation in different fields, because it gives you different perspectives, how to solve challenges and problems you may not be able to facilitate with those who are just thinking alike. So you would need to have this incentive to have diverse perspective on solutions and ways of working. And I guess making a job attractive, it's just on its own, not just enough to emphasize that women needs to take male roles, right? So ways to behave. And this is what, for example, I see quite a lot, that we don't need more, I don't know, aggressive women that undermine community values and other women. That we don't need. We need absolutely different types of engagement thinking where values, so maybe values or accessibility to this branch is put it in the center of decision. So when the human being is put it in the center of the decision, it's very easy to achieve change. And of course, there are different countries with different approaches to topics like childcare, right? So flexible working time, access to support when it comes to children or elderly or someone. So like organization also could be more interested into offering just more than a good payment. Whereas ecosystem, right? So from the team to decision making to this flexibility may encourage women to go into this direction.
Yeah.
And I guess from the knowledge side, it's quite exciting. I think nothing prohibits anyone to be interested in this field, male or female, doesn't matter. And yet in different periods of our life, we have different priorities that needs to be acknowledged and recognized and not treated as an obstacle for any career progression or individual development. I think from that perspective, we don't need even more communities that do exist just for a label, this is women in something. I guess there should be different type of community, whereas, so not an individualistic goal set in the center, but maybe a value-driven one.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we hear from you is perhaps build on the unique traits and values that each person, male, female, display, and perhaps continue to build on that and don't get stuck into the stigmatic approach that if you're a female, then automatically you start having limiting beliefs and you think that you will get fewer chances, but rather continue to invest in yourself, invest in your own capabilities, in your own skills, and build on your identity, your persona, and then eventually the opportunities will come.
Get support also from male peers, right? So they have this possibility to include into their circles, into the decision making, right? So into the leadership, more women. Nothing prohibits them from doing that.
Yes.
I also
it just needs
like
to be encouraged.
I'd like to add here that maybe it's not a capability issue, but more of a confidence issue that women tend to have when joining a field like cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think the power balance sometimes is not adjusted, right? I do believe that women need to prove themselves more by entering this field. And I know that the field itself is complicated and complex enough, and that adds another hurdle, right? So to overcome this imposter syndrome, very famous for a lot of women entering new fields. So we need other people to reach out to us, give us support and comfort, and maybe give us this psychological safety that we can strive. And even if we do mistakes, we are human beings. We sometimes make mistakes. That's absolutely fine.
Iryna, what does a day in the life of Iryna looks like?
You're asking me for a working day or a weekend?
You can offer us a glimpse from each if you want.
So my day can change over different periods and different projects. So that I do have. But mostly it's a lot around, partially it's about learning. So I would definitely learn something new during the day. At least 30 minutes of my time will be invested into some new area or some aspect. Not necessarily just technical aspects. Sometimes it's about like communicating values and other things. Then it's definitely going to be up to 50% conversation with other peers. Not necessarily in cybersecurity, it can be my colleagues in different business areas, in technology areas. And so part of that will be related to technical reviews or writing on certain standards or improvements. So it will be like a bit disbalanced, but still more about this hands-on work on different product services that are currently requiring my attention. Yeah. And I guess in the evening, I will definitely spend time with my family and friends. Most of the time I try to balance and also increase the reach and in community. I definitely would take few of the days, so in the week, if we're not talking just about one, to connect with other people, peers, and look for to the ways to broaden the community that I have. I do appreciate and I do believe that the best is to build up this community with like-minded. I think I said it 3 times, but I strongly believe in it. And so I will then spend a part of this day doing that and connecting with friends and family.
Okay.
Thank you.
Looking ahead, what do you see, maybe also on a personal note, for yourself in maybe 5 to 10 years, but also on a security or cybersecurity perspective?
Yeah, so I think if we progress with this notion and technology of automation of unnecessary work, right? So, or how I call it, paper flipping work, I do want to believe that we will have more time to focus on solving complex challenges by sorting out some of the activities that can be solved by technology that can, for example, fill out forms better than we do. And we can focus on improving in other areas and aspects that were left without proper attention, because you cannot put your attention on everything. I guess we also see that the job that we do will include more and more aspects from different areas that needs to be mastered. As you already mentioned, right? So AI topic will come in. Maybe we don't know for how long it's going to stay in this shape and form. It may stay longer, maybe shorter. But there are other challenges, right? So we still haven't solved, so our cooperation and so global socioeconomical issues also related to supply chain. In some of areas, we do have now interest to build more resilient, robust, but isolated, so ecosystems around cybersecurity. We may also go into the direction of fragmentation, and I personally do not support that. I think we are better connected and exchangeable, right? So in terms of knowledge and in terms of technology, this is what makes us as a humanity to our best. But we may also divert back, instead of forth and going into more isolation. It can be anything. And of course, so we kind of also dependent, and this field of cybersecurity will depend also on these global changes that we have. What I also hope that we will have more people interested into going to cybersecurity area, that they're going to find this area more accessible also through the new technology, right? So they can provide maybe not necessary access only through certification, studying and so on, but studying can be also something that is easier to consume for people who are just interested and want to learn more. So in 10 years' time, we're still going to have discussions about some basics in cybersecurity that are not solved. We will not have maybe perfect security ever, but I want to see a community that wants to go towards better posture that we have today. Because I see on many occasions that sometimes is, I cannot achieve this perfect, shiny solution that is absolutely robust and secure, then we will divert for a bare minimum. This is not what I hope we're going to have in 10 years. I hope secure by design as a term, as an exercise, as a ways of working will be more integrated, more known than compliancy. I want this secure by design mindset overtaking compliancy area. And of course, that compliancy will be more than just a, paper-based exercise and will require additional skills. Yeah, so that can be supplemented with technology.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Iryna. We have reached towards the end of our podcast, and it felt like we blinked and the time passed by. Julia, do you have any last-minute topics that you want to bring?
Not for I can I there are topics that will prolong this podcast.
Hours,
3 hours.
indeed. We need hours, indeed. And
Maybe one thing you can leave for our listeners, some resources, accessible resources that they can get into, or maybe some that you really value and you want to push forward, or something that will help them make themselves more familiar with this field.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned, right? So this OVASPA exchange resource, you just can Google for it or find this organization on LinkedIn. And then from that, you can learn. We constantly trying to update the resources that we have, and as well as I will also encourage to do some from time to time the research on publications. So for example, just looking into Scholar, right? So looking into freshly published papers on AI security, and to maybe put some time and effort into reading scientific papers rather than just listening to advertisement that also praises and offers us a perfect, secure and robust solution. So maybe not.
Already the information.
Yeah, so also to learn how to crystallize this knowledge from those scientific verifiable results, and how to compare it with something that comes more from this vendor advertisement side. We also said that AI is going to be used in security more and more, and it means more and more we need to understand if or under which circumstances it can be a help or under which it cannot. I definitely also would share a few links with you after this recording. Maybe we can add just to the description for those for accessibility.
We can. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you today, for the insights that you have provided to our community. Thank you for watching, and a special thank you to Yuri for allowing us the opportunity to have this podcast alone today. We say hello to you. For our listeners, Yuri is undergoing a series of traveling events this month. Therefore, it's a good opportunity for him to practice that networking that we've all been preaching about, and learn about new insights from the wonderful community of cybersecurity. See you next time. Until then, please like, share, and subscribe. Share within the wider community, and see you to the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.